Welcome everyone to the Emergent Essence Dynamics webinar on September 8th, and our theme is Transmuting Emotions, which is a pretty good subject for the times we're in right now, because a lot of people are very emotional so, about one thing or another. So this is really looking at how to harness the emotions, because they contain powerful energy, which could be constructive or destructive. They can help move our thoughts forward into creative action, or they can also move us into confusion and inaction, where we just spiral upon ourselves. So the intention of this webinar is to help sort that out. How do you start mastering your own, well, how do you create discipline over your own emotions and create mastery over them, so that you can move forward with clarity of action. Welcome Anne and Suzanne, and for joining live, and welcome everyone else who would be watching the recording. I'm interested to know from either of you, Anne or Suzanne, what's drawing you here today, or what is it that you'd like to know in particular? I know I have specific things to present, but I'd also love to know what is it that you want to take from the webinar today, if there's anything.
First of all, I haven't talked English for a long time, so excuse my speech anyway.
Oh, that's fine.
I'm relatively new in this whole methoding and the whole package. I started doing an education in relaxing methods.
Mm-hmm.
It's in German, it's called Entspannungstrainer.
Yeah.
Relaxing, yeah. And till then, or from that day on, I feel like a sponge. I'm taking every information I can get to grow.
Okay, awesome, excellent. Yeah, this will relate well if you're working with energies, the body and the energies. This will relate very well. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. And is there anything that you had in mind, or that you'd like to know in particular?
No, I'm relatively open-minded. I'm really into suggestions, and I'd like to know how to make them much stronger.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That'll work well. Great. And for you, Anne, was there anything?
Well, I've been following you in and out since Berlin Change Days 19. Yeah. I'm still considering taking your course at some point, probably when it will be possible to do it in person, because I just can't sit on Zoom anymore. I'm
really well. By the way, so let me just say that right up front here in the beginning. We're going to resume courses around mid-October. All right, I'm just about to announce the dates, and I'm not going to be doing it in person anytime soon in Europe. It would only be in Canada if I do it in person at this point. Right.
Yeah,
so
I guess so.
But what I'm doing though is I'm creating a version of shorter Zoom sessions, right? So you're not on Zoom all day, right? So we would have more sessions that are shorter, right? It's spread over a period of days or a couple of weeks. So that's what it's going to look like right now. But yeah,
okay, I'll check, and we'll see also how things unfold ongoing. But are you considering coming back to Europe when borders reopen in a?
Not unless there's freedom of travel. If there are going to be restrictions and passports and all that stuff, I'm not going anywhere. Yeah. Right. So I'm staying where I am. That might mean I'm staying put for a year or two, however, until this all gets worked out. But when there is freedom of travel, then I will be traveling. Yeah.
Okay.
That's my short of the long.
Right.
It's too much of a hassle to travel and work, and it's unpredictable as well in case they suddenly lock things down again. So I'm just leaving it like at least until March. Everything is going to be online. Right?
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
With between continents right now, it's really difficult.
Yeah,
I know about that.
Yeah.
So yeah, and the topic of today, transmuting emotions, speaks to my heart, as I'm in a period where a lot is going on. I'm transitioning to another phase of my life and to another phase of myself. And some parts of me are still, so it's the parts of me are a bit scattered. Some, that's the impression I have. Some parts are already in another dimension or way of seeing things. I don't know if this makes any sense. And some other parts are still stuck, and this creates a lot of unpredictable emotional reactions.
Yeah, no, this is actually great, because if you look at the poster here, I mean, it's creating an alignment of centers of energy, centers of intelligence. Okay, and I mean, we're going to look at body centers and their function and how this energy moves through it. All right, and how we can capitalize on each center. So I'll explain in a moment what EED exactly is. I know, Anne, you've heard it before, but you have not, Suzanne, and anyone else with the recording. This will create an alignment of body centers, an alignment of energies, an alignment of various selves, an alignment of various periods of history within ourselves. Like, EED is looking at the individual as very vast. All right, and very expanded. We're simple yet complex, okay, or we're complex yet simple. So creating, to put it simply, this is not only about transmuting emotional energy into creative action, but also creating an alignment so that we are acting congruently, aligned according to our creative source, and not driven by fear or reactivity or society or pressure or something else. So that tends to split us apart, right? So this is about how do we be coherent and congruent, all right? And Suzanne, by the way, just let me know if I'm talking too fast or if there's something that you don't understand, language-wise, whatever, okay?
I won't understand every word, but the content it's okay.
Okay, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, no, that's great.
Thank you.
So to be brief, what are we discovering? Well, we're going to look at an overview of how emotional energy or emotions shape our thoughts and actions, right? They influence our actions and our thoughts. So the emotions can help create clarity or confusion in our thoughts. And they can create momentum where we are taking action, or stagnation where we are just self-indulgent and not moving. And sort of, it's like a serpent or a snake eating its own tail, right? Going nowhere, just going in circles. This is why it's important to take control and master the emotional energy. It's like trying to ride a chariot with wild horses. Who's in control? The horses or the one holding the reins, right? The master. Are you the master of the chariot, or are the horses the master of you? Okay. Because this is very powerful energy, the emotions, all right? So we're going to look at some simple ways to use emotions to release fear, toxicity, stress, anxiety. It can be a release mechanism, and then also a way to anchor and program things by intention, all right? There are other webinars where I've covered that in more depth. And then, of course, our courses are built upon this, okay? How do you program, deprogram, release, and anchor things, okay? And a few tips on separating emotions from our story, our identity, or our narrative, or our conflict, so that when we're in difficult situations, whether that be a conflict or stress, that we're not driven by emotional reactivity, but we are taking the emotions to the side and coming into a clean, clear thought, and then using the emotions to drive ourselves forward creatively instead of having the emotions drive the conflict, because that can get very messy, right? Any response or comments there from you there, or is this looking good, looking okay? All right. So very briefly, what is emergent essence dynamics? Well, there's three things. Essence, that's coming from source. What is our permanent, timeless source or all potential or infinite awareness. This is what we're tapping into. And then how does that emerge into physical expression, into human expression? How does essence express itself everywhere through us? Dynamically, meaning it's always emerging, it's always in the now developing, and it's always in a relationship, it's always in dynamic, it's in a creative expression, all right? So we use this. So what I've done is this whole program of Emergent Essence Dynamics is basically a universal model for how to capture the basic process of human transformation and development. How do we function, all right? And we function through patterns, basically behavioral patterns. It's through these patterns that essence is going to express itself. So this is applicable for coaching, leadership, facilitation, healing, mediation, or just plain old personal development. It's like a mapping system. 3 things we're looking at, which is building resilience and autonomy in ourselves. And that is the foundation for transformation. If we are not in a resilient state, resilient meaning I'm invincible, I'm fine, I'm able to bounce back, I'm not in fear of being destroyed, right? When I'm resilient, I can always rebound, I can always rebuild, all right? That is a healthy state for transformation. If I'm trying to change or transform myself from a state of fear, either it's not going to be a true transformation, or it's just going to be reinforcing more and more fear and destruction within myself, all right? It's not a healthy transformation. Or I just won't change. Then we're looking at, so we're building a foundation of resilience, and then we're looking at what are our actions and behaviors, either in relationship to myself, to another person, to world, or to time, or to the facilitator, right? There's 5 ways we can be in relationship. It's through our actions and behavior and our energy that reveals our patterns, how essence is expressing itself through patterns. Then we can start shifting those patterns. And that is what is creating the process of transformation. There are natural patterns of change that we go through, which we teach through the modules, and we each have unique patterns of growth. So when practicing EED as a facilitator or a practitioner, you're building resilience, you're looking at dynamics, and then you're watching for what are the patterns that are emerging, and you're using natural patterns with those to create change. And everything is based upon fractals, meaning simple patterns. So actually, what looks complex can be very simple when we understand the patterns. And when we are in a resilient state, we can easily shift the patterns. When we shift the pattern, we shift all the outcomes. So multiple issues at once can change when we shift a basic behavioral pattern. Any questions or comments there? I'm hoping that doesn't sound too complex. I'm hoping it sounds simple enough.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Any comments on that or questions? The emotions are going to be the energy driving the pattern. Okay. The emotions are what are going to either release and open a pattern so it can shift, or it's going to lock a pattern in so it plays in a very strict and rigid fashion. That's part of the function of emotions. It's to seal a pattern in or break open a pattern, depending on how we use the emotion, right? So here's some various ways we're going to work with emotions and energy. And I'm saying emotions and energy in this, as I'm looking at it quite as the same thing, all right?
Okay.
Okay. So what is the function of emotions? They are to bind things together. They are to drive things forward into action. They can program patterns, and they can store information. So emotions are like the glue between thought and action. They're like the glue that binds the thought and intention to an action. They're also the force that drives that thought into expression or into action and manifestation. Without, it's like the fire or the fuel behind that runs the engine, okay? Without emotional energy, we're not driven to move. We won't. Or our intentions won't have a focus and a strength to become a reality. Okay, so we do need emotions to make thought into reality. Okay. How are you guys doing with this? All right. If you may want to listen to a webinar we did at the end of 2020. That was December 2020, and it was applications of the 7 Hermetic principles. That might be very interesting for you, how EED is a direct system or a direct mapping of these 7 principles, which work well with law of attraction, alchemy, but also we're coming from the fundamental premise that everything begins with thought. Everything begins with thought, and then it moves into creative expression, right? And this is how the 7 Hermetic principles are based upon. Everything begins with the universal mind or universal thought, which it then becomes manifestation. And everything is expressed through opposites, polarity. This is what EED covers also. And how do we swing back and forth in polarity in order to keep that creative energy moving, right? I'll speak a little bit more about polarity later, how that works with emotions. Okay, so when we're working with emotions, we're basically anchoring and programming something, or we are releasing and deprogramming something. All right.
I do have a question. What do you think anchors more, the thoughts or the emotion?
The emotion is anchoring the thought into the body and into the system. So like I'm saying, the emotion is going to bind the thought into a pattern, into the body. It's creating the alignment, all right? Okay. When it's done with emotional energy, the thought will be better anchored. If it's done without emotional investment, it's not well anchored, it's going to fall apart. All right.
So it's some kind of, I don't know the English word, is symbiotic.
Yeah, it creates a symbiosis. Yes. Okay. So if I have an intention with a vision, I need to bring a feeling into it. So the intention and the vision line up, plus a body posture, plus a movement, plus a word. And when it's done with emotional investment connected to my well-being, where it's pleasurable, I'm now more guaranteed to create a symbiosis between my thought and my posture, my intention, my action, and my movement. All will work together, right? So that's what I'm doing. I'm anchoring and programming a plan of action for myself and actual action, right? And even if you associate a smell with it, smell will be very strong to bring the emotion back, plus the thought, memory, or intention. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. If it's done without emotion, it's not well anchored. Okay. Then we can also use emotions to release or deprogram ourselves of something. Perhaps there's a pattern that we're using, we don't like it, right? We want to change it, all right? Well, we've got to kind of steam off the emotion so the pattern can start to loosen up and dissolve. All right. So this is where, if we've got toxic patterns, we want to deprogram it. We have to separate the emotion from the story, thought, narrative, pattern, program, all of that. We have to take the emotion and the story separate from each other. This is why when somebody is telling you about their bad day and they're getting all emotional while they tell you all the events, they're actually reinforcing all their reactive responses as they tell you the story emotionally. Okay, this is why when we listen to the news cycle about all the horrible things going on in the world, and you have to do this and you can't do that, and you have to beware of this and watch out for that. It's done so emotionally. It's triggering your emotion. It's putting thoughts, it's programming you emotionally through the emotion to think a certain way, right? So you have to separate story from emotion if you do not wish to be programmed in a certain way, all right? And if you want to release the programming, you have to separate the story from the emotion. If you want to anchor a new program, then you want the emotion attached to the new story, the new vision, the new belief, all right? Like I said, emotions bind things together. How are you guys doing with this? Is it making sense? Okay. Mm-hmm. To work with health, with emotional energy in a healthy way, we want to find what is the vital energy that the emotion is carrying with it, meaning how is it nourishing? Okay. If it's a fear-based energy that's going to be destructive, that is not nourishing. So why would I want to feed that back onto myself? Right? I want to release that to find what is the pure vital energy underneath. So you might have a toxic layer of energy or emotion. You want to steam that off or release it, and then find what is the pure creative fire underneath it. Okay, so this is what I mean by transmuting emotions. You can take something that is coarse or impure or imbued with selfishness or fear or destructiveness. You can burn off those impurities to find what's the pure energy underneath, find what's vital in it, and then feed back that to your own self and well-being. So when we are anchoring or programming something with an emotion, we want it purified and vital, meaning it's nourishing, okay? It's nourishing to our sense of self and well-being. That allows then us to reinforce our strengths with the well-being and our resilience. Then we can start generating emotional desire for action, because we're then programming from well-being. We're joining that up with new intentions, new beliefs, new thoughts, which reinforce our well-being, which then create actions that reinforce our well-being. So then, of course, we'll have desire for those actions. Is this making logical sense? Mm. Okay. This is why EED works on resilience first, because if we're going to program a plan of action and it's all based on fear, it's not going to promote well-being, so it's not going to work. You're just going to create more stress and anxiety for yourself. So this is why we focus on a foundation of resilience first, so we can get clean, clear intention, which creates clean, clear, pure desire for action, which creates clean action. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Troy, just I'm gonna I need to attend to something in
Sure.
For 1 minute. I'm back.
Yep. If you wish, you can mute yourself and mute your video too, if you wish. It's fine. Yeah. So then we're going to use those emotions to reinforce our strengths and desire, and we're going to reinforce that energy itself with the body and language, which I mentioned before. We want to connect the thought with the body, with the language, with the belief, all of it, and it's the emotion that is the glue that holds it all together. Mm. When working with emotions, we're not focusing on heightening the emotion itself. Emotion is a response. So what really produces emotion is action. It's through action and intention, and then resistance is what's going to create more emotion. So this is a very basic rule of thumb for an actor. You don't focus on being sad. You focus on what is taking you away from something that then creates that sad response, for example. Like, so you want to focus on the movement and the action. I have a desire to be somewhere but something's preventing me from being there. So when I focused on, I really want to get there and life is pushing back on me, I'm going to have an emotional response. It's going to make me angry or sad. Or when I focus on, there's my destination and life is going for me, life is flowing in that direction. And then that's going to create joy, right? Because I'm enjoying that flow. So you amplify what you're focusing on and amplify the focus. That's going to create more of the emotional response. It's through focus and action and resistance. Does that make sense?
Yes. So it means you, even if you, for example, you have a bad day, you just accept this like it is. It is bad. It won't go. It won't go a great day, but you can also stay proactive. Yeah.
So you could say how you could focus on, oh my God, my day is bad. I feel bad. It's such a bad day. You're actually focusing on the emotional state, meaning it's bad, and it's actually making you weaker and weaker because it's taking away your resilience. It's debilitating, right? Or you can, so that just becomes more and more stagnant, self-indulgent. It's like you're sinking in dirty water and the water just gets dirtier and dirtier and dirtier and more stale, okay? There's nothing fresh in that. There's no movement.
Yes.
So that's when we're indulging in our emotions and it's actually working against our health. Whereas if I focus on what in the day is working against me, what is working against me in the day, that's going to bring an emotional response like, I don't like that. So what is it I don't like? All right. It's not about the feeling. It's what in the day is working against me. Okay. That's going to bring more fresh movement because it's going to make me want to move. I'm going to want to fight it or run away from it or change it, right? So it's moving me into action. Do you understand?
And I'm able to find solutions to change that, right?
That's right. So if I focus on what is it about the day that's affecting me, what is the day doing to me, it's going to produce fresh energy, right? Then I can look at, forget about do I like it or not like it, but accept what is it doing? What is it doing to me? Meaning, how am I affected? Now, what's the fire and the fury that's emerging in me? What kind of energy is that? Now, don't focus on the day. Now focus on what's the energy flowing in me now. Then focus on actually what is life-giving in this energy. Don't look at it as being positive or negative. I mean, I might be very angry and upset. So then I'll look at, all right, so how is this affecting my body? How is this actually giving me life force? That will start purifying it, because then I'm getting into the pure fire underneath so you have fury or anger. What's the fire underneath? So how is this actually life-giving? Oh, it's heating up my body. It makes my heart pump faster. I want to run. I want to kick, punch, fight. But how is that actually revitalizing for me, right? Then we can isolate that pure life-giving energy. I can then say, how does that connect to my well-being and my essence? Now what I've done is I've got a pure creative energy I can use, right? Then I can start to think, all right, so what is it now that I don't like about my day? What now from this resilient state do I want to change or act upon? Then I can start saying, all right, so here's what I'd like to do differently. Then I take that pure energy that I captured before and I use that to motivate me towards the new plan of action. That's how I transmute my bad day. Is that making sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
I know it might sound complex, but the more we say, look how bad the bad day is, I feel bad, all I'm doing is I'm sitting in shitty water smelling the shit, and the shit is getting shittier.
And the whole thing starts with the wording, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's right. So, and we actually work with this directly in module 2. There's a whole technique about how do you take a problem and remagnetize it with a resilient state of energy, meaning I can convert problem energy into resilient and creative energy. I haven't solved the problem at all, but I'm changing my relationship to the problem, where initially I'll have a problem energy, which weakens me. I can convert that into resilient energy. Now, when I look at the same situation, I'm motivated to create instead of feeling bad and defeated. Does that make sense?
Yes. So it's not just that I accept the feeling. I won't stay there and say, okay, it is like it is. And I change it.
Yeah, you're changing your relationship to it.
I transmit the acceptance in a change. Is that right?
Yeah, all with emergent essence dynamics, all change begins with acceptance first. You can go through all kinds of other programs, and what they're doing is they're saying, oh, you don't like the situation? Well, we can change it. But what they're actually saying is they're not accepting the reality as it is. So what you're trying to do, you're trying to change something from non-acceptance. You're creating more of a fight. You're creating more resistance. That's why it won't change. Why are you not accepting it? Because you're not resilient. You're thinking, I am not resilient enough to just be with the bad thing. So therefore I need to change it because I'm not strong enough to deal with it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that's a false transformation. Whereas if you say, yeah, here's something, I don't like this. It's black. The color black threatens me. I need to change the phone. But actually first, just look at the black. Black is black. It's not going to be anything else for now. How are you still okay when you see the black phone? Oh, actually, I'm kind of calm now. Okay, now we're in a calmer, resilient place. I'm coming from acceptance. Now I can begin to create a relationship that's a two-way street, so I can be co-creative with my situation. I'm not trying to manipulate it, force or control it. I'm actually adaptable with it. That will create more natural and sustainable organic change. Change built upon acceptance of what is. Otherwise, I'm trying to build a fantasy world from a fantasy. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Sometimes I would prefer the dreamland.
Oh, yeah. I mean, oh, I wish my day were different. Okay, great. But that's not living in reality.
Right? Sure.
Okay. This is, again, why I say the very first thing we do in EED, no matter if it's coaching, leadership, personal growth, doesn't matter. Build resilience. How do we build resilience? By building acceptance of what is around us and realizing I accept what's here and I'm okay. That doesn't mean I have to like what's here. I don't like how the world is all screwed up right now, how there's restrictions and lockdowns and pushes for vaccines and masks and all this kind of shit. But when I come to an acceptance of what it is, that doesn't mean nothing's going to change, but I can now work with what is and what's happening. Now I can be more strategic in how will I implement certain changes, because I'm working with what's the current game we're playing. Let me learn the rules of the current game so I can play this game better and even start participating in the game and start changing the rules of the game gradually. The game will change if I'm participating in it, but I have to know what I'm participating in. I got off track there a little bit, but does this make sense, what I'm saying? We have to learn the rules of reality before we can shift it. Okay, so I did talk about some emotional investment. If you want to do a new anchoring or a new programming, you're going to take that new idea, right? But we want to make sure the new idea or the belief is coming from a resilient state, not from fear. Fear is coming from disconnect, emptiness, okay? It's trying to cover up an emptiness. That's reactivity. When something comes from resilience, it's coming from a truth, a permanent, timeless truth from within. And it's indestructible, okay? We can bind that idea with resilience and desire, which will then create more vision, and that we can feed that back to our well-being, okay? And then, so now this idea is infused not only with resilience and desire and vision, it can then be anchored into the body, a posture, okay, a movement, and then we can have a key word that goes with it, all right? And so now we're lining up thoughts and actions and with emotions and energy. Then what we do a lot in EED is once something is anchored, we don't leave it there. We want to now try to test it, poke it, prod it, try to destroy it a little bit so it has to stand up for itself, okay? This actually works with neuroscience. When creating new neural pathways, it's through repetition, right, that you're going to create a new pattern, but it's repetition with pleasure and relaxation, but then repetition with a little bit of trouble, meaning it's got to find the pathway again and again and again by getting a little bit off pattern to get back on pattern. Okay, so you got to deconstruct to reconstruct a little bit. So that's what we do in the final phase of anchoring, is we want to re-trigger and re-trigger and re-trigger with more investment and repetition. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's another way to the usefulness of emotion, but it has to be done with well-being. If we do this, when we're so fearful and invested in our fears, we're actually programming ourselves. And we are deconstructing and reconstructing ourselves with all of these nightmarish scenarios, okay? And again, television doesn't help because it's constantly feeding us nightmarish ideas with nightmarish emotions, and it's repeating and repeating and repeating, right? And again, that's basic mind control and brainwashing. What else do I got here? Deprogramming. Okay, so if we have a fearful state or a pattern, we want to separate story from emotion, and we want to separate truth or facts from perception and feeling. Feelings and perceptions are not facts, all right? Again, how do you read through a news story? It's trying to mix facts with perceptions and feelings, all right? A fact is a fact. The number 5 is number 5. There is no perception or feeling that goes with it. It's just number 5. But if I try to tell you that 5 is awful and fearful and it's going to attack you, right? So now you're forgetting what 5 is, and now you're learning about being attacked and being fearful. You better watch out. As soon as 5, I show you that, oh my God, I'm going to be attacked, right? That's the programming, right? 5 is 5. It has nothing to do with how you feel or what's going to be done to you. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So that's what all these identity wars are based upon. Like, oh my God, white privilege. Oh my God, Black Lives Matter. Oh my God, gender. Oh my God, right? Oh my God, it's all, oh my God. It has nothing to do with identity or gender or what race you are, okay? What they're programming is for you to be fearful and on the defensive, or to feel ashamed or to feel guilty. And then you're taking action on that, okay? So when you're reading through a news story or listening to a story, you separate the pure facts, the black and white, from perceptions, perspectives, feelings, obligations, fears, all of that stuff has to be separated out. When you are going through your bad day, separate the fact from the feeling. Okay, I felt horrible. Okay, but what happened? Well, John said this to me. Okay, John said A, B, C. But John is a mean person. Well, that's a feeling and a perception, right? It's not a fact. Do you guys understand? Mm-hmm. Separate your facts from the perceptions and the feelings. If you're going through ventilating about your bad day, then don't tell the story of the bad day, but just vent the bad feelings. Does that make sense? So there's a couple ways you can do it. You can clear out your story without defense or argument, just facts, meaning just write down the facts of the day. Here's what happened. Here's what happened. But don't put emotion in the writing. Or without telling the story of the day, go and blow out with a blah, 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 scream into your pillow and punch the couch. Bad day, bad day, bad day. But don't attach it to the events of the day. Does that make sense? Ventilate, take out all the steam of the feelings. Okay. So if you're coaching, or if you're doing massage therapy, and somebody suddenly, has a release of toxicity, let them release the steam, but not the story. Okay. Does that make sense? It's also a way to work with trauma. So you can have the person without emotional attachment, maybe put the trauma onto a screen, and they can detach themselves and then just write through the events, write it out, or the little pieces of the events. But what you don't want them to do is be emotional while they tell their story, because what they're doing is they're doing all the mental programming that goes with it. Okay. Sorry to harp on that for so long, but it's very, very important, because what a lot of people are being encouraged to do is to ventilate with story. That's when they're bitching and complaining and ranting and raving. And what they're doing is they're just doing more and more negative programming. They're re-traumatizing themselves. Does that make sense? Okay.
But I think that this is the hardest part, to separate it. Even when I'm really emotional myself, I think it's for me it's very hard to separate it in that situation.
So then, if you've got to voice it or scream it out, you can voice it out or you can act it out, but don't feel it out. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because the energy has to move. So if you're going to voice it, then speak nonsense. Okay.
Yes.
As opposed to, and then he said this, and then he said that, because that's a story, right? But this, right? You're getting it out. The raw emotion is out. Then you can write out, and then he said that, and then he said that, but you're not so emotionally invested in it now. So then you can clear the story without the emotional investment. Does that make sense? That's how we release and deprogram. Okay. Wow, I didn't expect to spend all that time. I guess that was pretty important. I'll just, before I move to the next slide, any comments or questions here on what you're taking in, or what feels insightful, or what's usable, or just anything else, anything you want to comment or question on?
No, okay. I already commented what I wanted to.
Yep. Just giving opportunities for pause. All right. So what we're working with here is a basic energetic cycle of tension. We're building tension, okay? There's a charging up, and then there's a release and a relaxation. Then there's going to be a new tension that's going to build up, wind it up, wind it up, wind it up, discharge or release, and then relaxation. So when we are in tension and winding things up, we're actually working through an automatic programming, okay, until it becomes too much and it wants to break and release. When we have a release, this is when we open, and when we relax, we become receptive. This is where we can have new programming, okay?
Are you talking about a negative or a positive tension?
It can be, this is going to actually be a positive. This is going to be where we're dropping into what we'll call source, dream or source, which is more of an unconditional state. I've got another slide to show you what that looks like. Okay. For example, when I'm working with conflict, I want to build the conflict until it's going to reach a release or a breaking point, right? And it's in when there's a then what happens is, so there's tension, and then I'm looking for opportunities for it to drop, to like let go of the conflict, to drop into something more resilient. This is then where I want people to bathe in their resilience. All right. Then they're going to come back and play a game, a little bit more of a game, and then they're going to drop into some resilience. And this is how we work with in life. We're going to play out our programming, and then we'll have a break in the programming. Like whenever we are surprised or stunned or shocked, that creates a break. All right. And it's in that moment of break where we can actually, we let go of our identity, we let go of our brain, we let go of our game, and we actually can access more of our essence, and we can gather up more resilience. We can reprogram ourselves, then we can return to reality or the game with a new belief in mind and play that out. So we work always with this cycle of tension and release, tension and release. We want to build tension and release. This is what music is based upon. All right, you have a build of tension and then release, and then a new building of tension and release. This is what life is. This is the undulation of the waves of water. Okay, that's how we function. Any questions there, or is it making sense somewhat? This is how you can work with transformation. All right, it's like you want to squeeze something out until it opens up and releases, and then you can reprogram. And then what's the new thing, the next thing? That's how you can work with fears, beliefs, etc.
Is there a way to force that to get the break to go to the breaking point?
Yes, that's.
You have to wait till I'm.
The whole EED model is built upon how do you accelerate those patterns. Mm-hmm. How do you work through tension, charge, discharge safely and effectively? Because sometimes if we put resistance on building tension, we just only want to be relaxed. We actually are working backwards through this, and we're creating more toxicity. What we want to do is, if there's some tension, we want to amplify it so it reaches its natural discharge sooner, mm-hmm. instead of sitting on it. Mm-hmm. If I'm avoiding inner tension, then I'm actually creating more tension, but it's not being released. And it's like I'm building a pimple on my face, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, mm-hmm. right? So I'm not actually doing the pure release. I'm just doing a buildup of toxins. Mm-hmm. What EED does is it takes one piece of tension, isolates it, builds it to its natural conclusion, so it will release safely and in a healthy way. We can clear that out, and then we can access a new layer of essence, mm-hmm. which will build a new tension. So the whole EED model is based upon how do you safely build tension and release it. Okay. Okay. Mm-hmm. Before it becomes toxic. Mm-hmm. Remember I said in the Hermetic principles, everything is coming from thought. So everything actually is coming from our thoughts and intentions, and then it's going to move down the body. We'll express our thoughts, but our thoughts, so where are our thoughts coming from? A higher source, a meta-awareness, or our essence. So we're bringing things from our higher self into our thoughtful self, so to speak, right? Our essence into our ego, right? And then we express it. So these thoughts then are going to want movement and desire and control, okay? There's our creative fire. right? We want to root we want to counterbalance what's coming from above with what's happening below. So if we're not plugged in to earth, we're not grounded, our creative fire might be out of control. And it's going to affect how we fight and defend ourselves and how we connect with others, how we're expressing what we're thinking, right? So what we're doing when we're transmuting emotions, we're taking these higher thoughts and grounding them, and then realigning them with our creative fire and movement and relationships so we can express, and then it's returning back into our thoughts and higher aspirations. Did that just make sense what I said or not? Mm-hmm. So what we're doing with EED is we're always counterbalancing, all right? What's between, say, earth and sky, between brain and creativity, between expression and power and control and relationship. Okay, so everything is being aligned with each other. What happens is we'll have these inner battles where power is battling relationship. Do I have power over you, or am I in relationship with you, right? Am I controlling you, or am I being validated by you? These are two basic games we play, right? And then our creativity, if it's not grounded in essence, okay? Our creativity, we're going to be creative in how we try to control each other, or we're going to be creative in how we try to validate each other, right? But our creativity is not based upon grounded expression of essence. It's going to be based upon, I need to be validated, or I need to control or be controlled. And that's what I'm using my creative fire for. That's what I'm using my brain power for. And that's what I'm expressing. Okay. So we work a lot with aligning these centers so that they are not battling each other, but we're finding not peace and harmony, but function. Our lower body centers are going to be responsible for desire, creativity, survival, movement, and drive. Our upper body, our upper emotions are going to be for love, validation, creating relationship, higher expression, right? And then we're going to have higher mental powers and higher spiritual aspirations. But we also have a body that's going to be attracted to what's physical, what's coarse, all right? So our lower emotions might be selfishness or anger or lust and desire, having sex, right? Our higher aspirations might be unity, peace, love, all right, relationship. So what we want to do is counterbalance that all together. Aspirations towards spirit or attractions towards what's lower and physical. Now, also, our emotions will be driven by, sorry, I'm going to skip ahead here. This, either connected or disconnected to essence. Our pathetic self, or our ego, which is in survival mode, it's taking action to seek an outside source because it feels disconnected with its own essence. It's always trying to ask this question, am I okay? Or the resilient self, which says, I'm okay, I'm connected with essence, therefore I'm thriving and I can create from pure essence. So are emotions driven by the pathetic self or the resilient self? Are the emotions driven by earthiness or higher aspirations? So there's a scale on how do we purify our emotions. Is the emotion driven by fear and selfishness, or essence and selflessness? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Comments or questions there? I see that we're at the top of the hour.
No.
This will affect how our brain is then working, how emotions can then, this is again the polarity of our relationship between safety and danger. That's how our animal mind functions, okay? It's going to be fearful, rigid, programmed to flee from danger and fight danger. It is always in search of safety and fulfillment, and it clings to that fulfillment, right? Our higher mind is more resilient, where it's connected to essence. It's always flowing and fluid. It's more accepting, and it is always creating from what is, right? So our animal ego is in defense of the world, and it's a filter or a guardian to allow information or not allow information into the higher mind and the right brain. The right brain and the higher mind is far more accepting, whereas the left brain and the animal ego is more on the defensive, and it filters. It's protecting us from danger. So another way, again, this is creating tension, and this is where we are in relaxation. So if we want to program somebody or ourselves, we want to get into the higher mind and the right brain. But we have to relax this open portal of, or relax this defensive portal of the left brain, lower mind. Okay, so that's why, again, when we're working with transformation, we want to calm the animal ego and neutralize the left brain. That's why we focus on resilience. Then we have direct access into the higher mind and the right brain in order to program new behaviors. Then we can create investment, and then we can take that new programming into how the left brain and the animal ego behave. That's
So
very,
that means
yeah.
if I invest in the right side, it affects the left side.
Yes.
Did I get it right?
Yeah. But you won't get into the upper right side until you relax the left lower.
Okay.
Okay. If we are driven by fear, then this takes over and it squeezes out the higher mind and the right brain. And all we're doing is acting more and more like zombies, animal zombies. Okay. And this starts programming itself with more and more toxic behaviors, more and more fear, and it gets more and more and more restrictive, rigid, and desperate. So it starts shrinking itself, okay? That's when, again, if we're attached to emotional narratives and I'm constantly bitching and ranting and raving and complaining about my bad day, guess what tomorrow is gonna be like? Another bad day, because I'm looking for the same thing. I'm going in circles. And I start doing this rigid reptilian program behavior. I have no openings into other possibilities, okay? I have other webinars on you working with the polarized brain. Let me see if there was anything else I wanted to show you. Yeah, again, here's another way to look at it. When we're attached to story, identity, and our conflicts, okay? When I'm attached to my truth, my perception, my identity, I'm locked in a bubble of reality. That bubble is going to be in opposition to other people's bubbles of reality. If our bubbles agree, then we get along. But if your bubble of reality is different, we're going to be in conflict, right? And the more rigid and closed we are, the more we resist each other and the more we try to conquer each other. And that's what creates conflict. Truth in opposition. These are the games we play. Now, as long as we remain in a closed bubble, we're always going to be in opposition. Yes, we're going to have friends, but we're also going to have enemies. But even with our friends, we're still in slight opposition. Okay. That's where our reality is driven by our ego and our identity. That's going to get us nowhere except conquer or be conquered, agree or disagree, win, lose, or compromise. Okay. And most people live up here. And fear is driving this. Fear keeps the bubble closed because we need to be protective and defensive. As soon as we start becoming a bit more resilient, when we drop into our own permanent, timeless self, we can then afford to start opening our bubble. And the first act of opening the bubble is acceptance. Whatever is over there, I know I'm going to judge it, and then I'm going to try and act upon it, but all I'm doing is closing my bubble. This here is my perception of what you are, right? That's what this little red circle in itself means. When I let that go and I begin to look over there and accept you for who you are, meaning I accept that you have brown hair and blue eyes. I might judge that and have a problem with it, but as soon as I just say, well, it is what it is, you have brown hair and blue eyes, and I let that affect me, where I become fascinated by your brown hair and blue eyes, I can find something of value in there and start appreciating it and bring that back into myself and be affected by it. I've opened my bubble and I've started to calm down, which calms you down, and you start opening your bubble. And that's how we enter what's called dream state, truth in flux, where here it was hot against cold, cold against hot. Well, here it's hot and cold working together to bring out a larger spectrum of temperature. Here is where the two opposites can be complementary together. Up here in game, it's two opposites that are opposing each other. It's either or, okay? This is where we start to build resilience, where we start to work in a more complementary fashion with each other. This is where emotions can then flow for well-being as opposed to reinforcing fear. Then we can drop our identity altogether and just become essence to essence. And this is like water flowing into water. This is a unity consciousness, right? All potential. So what EED does is it's taking somebody from their story, learning their game, cracking the game open so they enter this more fluid state, dropping it all together so they discover their timeless self, their essence. Then they can pull from that, start redefining their dream, which redefines their game, which redefines their story. So here is where we need to let go of the emotion. We might want to charge up that emotion until there's a discharge, a release that drops them into dream source, they relax. Then we can start putting them back into game, building up new tensions, new programming, okay? So this is how EED works. That's the basic flow of transformation. Here is where you use emotions to reinforce well-being. Here's where you want to let go of emotions in order to drop the story, drop the game temporarily. Questions there? Comments? We have a lot more webinars where I do show these diagrams again and again in different contexts. So let's get back to basics. How do I relax into my own essence? It's whatever energy you're experiencing, enjoy connecting to that energy and pay attention to how it feeds your well-being, how it nourishes you, all right? Even if you start with my bad day, like I described earlier, but just the pure energy, not attached to the story, but the pure energy itself, even if it's a fast-moving energy, how is it feeding you? How is it nourishing you? Maybe it's heating up the body, maybe it's speeding you up, or maybe it's calming you down. But enjoy how it's nourishing you and notice where that energy is concentrated. There's a body center where it will be concentrated. Then you can start just noticing what's the special quality of that energy, what's the sensation, and where is it located. Then you could start to circulate that from head to foot. So from center to head, back to center, down to the feet, back to center. Then you can open it up even further where it can go up into the sky and then return. And you're always going to receive something from sky. And then it can go down into the earth and come back up. And it's going to bring something from the earth back to your center. Again, what is it nourishing? What is nourishing you from the earth? What is inspiring you from the sky, right? That's what's going to create a vertical loop. When the energies become very pure and unconditional, they're going to be a variation of peace, love, unity, or limitlessness. What we call an essential quality. This is what helps build resilience within yourself. And then it can be an essential energy where it feels very unconditional, or you can start moving it towards desire and action, and it'll start to form into some kind of an emotion. If it becomes more permanent and timeless, it'll be more essential, meaning not attached to any desire or movement. Or if you start to bring in an attachment, a destination and a desire, it becomes an emotion. Does that make sense? You can have essential energy and then emotional drive. So this is a way to circulate energy within yourself, where you can take an essential quality, circulate it where it's taking in vital energy, giving that away, and then you're receiving inspiration, and absorbing that within yourself, and then you can let that go. And let go of all your stress, fears, and anxieties into the earth. Take in vital energy. This is a self-circulation, or a way to recycle energies so we have a healthy flow. And I've got more webinars specifically on this. And this is what we learn right away in Module 1 with Emergent Essence Dynamics, is what are the basic steps? I mean, I've given you some basics, but we work this, we practice this. How do you capture these essential energies and circulate them, right? Either within yourself, or how do you coach somebody into circulating it for themselves, right? And this is very, very useful for coaches, facilitators, leaders, energy workers. This is very, very, very basic. Also, I talked about opening the bubble. We spend the whole first module on you practicing opening and closing the bubble within yourself and with other people, and how to really get control over opening and closing the bubble in the relationship so you can move freely between game and dream. That creates a foundation for creating healthy change and transformation. I forgot to change the title. So that was from the last webinar. Just in summary, and then also I'd love to hear what you're taking away. I know we're a bit over time. If you have to go, you can always drop out. But just in summary, emotional energy will either move us swiftly. Emotional energy moves fast. It can move us swiftly into clarity and action, or it will have us stagnate in self-indulgence, inaction, confusion, because we're really just sort of like circling in our own stink, right? Emotions need to move and move out. They need to move in, move through, move out, and it must be done with action. If we sit on our emotions, it just stagnates on itself, festers on itself, right? Our emotional energy moves between aspiration towards more spiritual intentions, or the attraction to physicality, like taking care of our basic body needs. All right. So, and emotions are moving on that spectrum, and we can transmute what's very, very, very coarse to very, very high. We can take what's very, very high and transmute it back into what's needed physically. If there's a good balance, then we are of healthy mind and body, right? We're also, emotions are moving between selflessness and being unconditional or pure essence, or being driven by fear, reactivity, disconnect, and ego, identity, selfishness, self-protection, and control, right? Again, it's moving between, is the emotion driven by the pathetic self or the resilient self? So that's two spectrums to think of: aspiring to the higher or being attracted to the lower, moving between resilience or fear. Is it driven by fear or resilience, or essence and ego? And each body center will have a specific intelligence and a function, like the throat is for communication, the solar plexus is for balancing and unity, the heart is for relationship, the gut is for drive and territory, the groin is for creative fire, the feet are for being rooted, right? And we can put that emotional energy into each center. That's going to transmute the energy to a pure function. That helps us channel our creativity and take action. If we align our centers with proper function and energy, they all work together, we will have clean action. We work on that in modules 2 and 3. And by the way, we will have module 4 coming out in October. That's a new module coming out. And module 4 is all about transmuting essence into creative action. emotions, think of it as thought in action. They are the fuel driving the thought to become manifest through action. Our thoughts are moving into manifestation and expression, and it's the emotion that's moving the thought through. If we don't take action on our thoughts and ideas, then we are actually wasting creative energy. We are sitting on emotional energy and stagnating, all right? Our thoughts and ideas are going to produce emotion and desire. And if we sit on that, then we're actually creating toxins within ourselves. We need to take action on the ideas, use the emotion to take clean action, okay? It is important to connect to source, what's permanent and timeless in ourselves. I have other webinars on exactly how to do that. You could look at, in particular, webinar 9 from 2020. It's called Core Vitality and Resilient Energy, or Resilient Wellbeing. Core Vitality and Resilient Wellbeing, number 9 of 2020. It's in our YouTube playlist of featured webinars. When we're connected to source, we can establish a foundation of resilience, and from there, we can then produce emotional energy and act. So when we're producing our emotional energy from source and resilience, it's clean and it's pure. When we are resilient, we are connected to what is permanent and timeless within ourselves, and therefore we're acting creatively, not reactively, meaning we're not taking action from ego, disconnect, or fear, all right? Behind every negative, coarse, or impure emotion, meaning selfish anger, right? There is a purified intention. So all we need to do is keep focusing on what is the pure intention behind the emotion. We can move that energy up the scale towards higher aspiration and towards essence, and remove the layers of ego and fear, all right? That's how we transmute energies into something more pure. So we can take something very coarse and dense and move it into its purity. So for example, selfish anger can become selfless passion, and that's then what we want to engage with. It's okay to feel selfish and angry, but don't act on it yet. Clean it up and then take action, all right? What are you taking away? What inspires you here, or in general, what are you taking from the webinar? By the way, our new courses are starting in October. If you want more information, just email me, info@essence-dynamics.com. We're going to be announcing the course dates actually within a week or less. So by the time this goes up, probably our dates will already be announced. But you can always send an email to get more info. Sorry, what were you going to say there, Suzanne?
The most impressive part for me was to separate the part with the separating the emotion from the thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
For me personally, that is the most thing I always forget when I'm in the emotion right now.
The emotion is going to carry the thought into a reality. So if you keep the emotion with the thought attached and the thought is not desirable, then if you're indulging in that emotion and not separating the thought, then you're actually pushing that thought more and more into reality.
Yes.
Okay. So then you're getting an undesirable effect. So this is why you have to say, I'm feeling very emotional. What's the thought with it? Separate them and then choose the thought or the emotion, but don't not the two together.
Yes. That was good. It was good to remember it.
Yeah,
and that's a real basic tip for life skills. Yeah.
There've been a lot of things I've already heard about or learned about it, but sometimes it's just good to hear again.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what, EED is, I don't think it's anything new. under the sun, but it's told maybe in a new way or in a more simple way or in a way that you can relate to. Everything is based upon natural principles and natural knowledge and basic the human potential, human behavior. It's really nothing new. And a lot is based upon natural alchemical processes of transformation.
And
the
I love
Hermetic
the idea about the flow between
Yeah.
the body, mind, thoughts.
It really, really
That's what
works.
it's about. It's, for me, it's the essence.
That is.
Everything in a flow.
So yeah, feel free to join our next webinars. The next one coming up is about the difference between knowledge, understanding, and wisdom.
Okay.
Okay, and it's about how to actually master the learning process. How do you learn how to learn and accelerate that process? And then how do we re-educate? Like, what are the things we're missing in how we were taught in our education process? Because a lot of times we're not accessing understanding and wisdom. And this is very, very important in order to have better creative expression and better adaptability in the world. Yeah. We need to learn what is it to access understanding and access wisdom. So that's going to be a very, very great, good webinar in 2 weeks.
Yes.
And then, you know, visit our website, essence-dynamics.com. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter. We're also on Telegram, but I haven't really built out the site yet on Telegram.
I'm not that into Telegram.
Yeah.
That much.
Yeah. So, but we've got stuff established on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and lots more recordings of the webinars on YouTube.
Okay.
And they're all free. And then if you want to learn more in depth or get practice, that's why you would take the courses. The webinars provide you with lots of information. The courses are what give you the in-depth training and practice on how to really harness all the skills and techniques together. So I thank you so much for joining, Suzanne, and thank you all for joining the webinar today. For those of you listening to the recording. Always feel free to shoot me an email with questions. Join other webinars live. We love it when you participate, and feel free to take a course if you're really interested in getting the in-depth training. Until then, pay attention to your emotions and your energies and your thoughts and your stories and your narratives, and start learning how to separate that out. And always focus back on your own vitality, enjoyment, and well-being. So keep radiant and resilient, and most of all, enjoy.